Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here with some more Age of Sigmar content. This one we're going to be talking about some of the big Skaven monsters and how they perform in the current season of AOS, the Scourge of Ghyran. So this here is a sample 2,000 point army with just all of the biggest models in my personal collection, and the nice thing about this list, and about Skaven in general, is that they have so many different fun units that a lot of these little parts of this list are actually interchangeable. It's not like set in stone. You can, swap out certain units for other ones to just change the playstyle to something that fits what you're going for. And there are plenty of great options. But I specifically want to focus on some of the big monstrous creatures in the Skaven arsenal, and this one because they got some significant buffs with the new Scourge of Ghyran rules. Now, of course, the Skaven battle traits benefit infantry units the most, allowing them to retreat without taking damage or bringing back half a destroyed unit at the cost of 1 CP through the gnaw hole. And of course, those are still in play, and for this army, which doesn't have so much infantry though, it'll just be the rat ogres and storm fiends that are coming back. And while all the big war machines and monsters cannot come back from the dead, they are a lot stronger now with the new Screaming Bell War Scroll, which is able to heal everything within a 13-inch radius, D3 health at the end of each and every turn, which is pretty huge, especially considering that a lot of the big Skaven monsters already have their own healing ability at the end of a turn. So they're potentially getting healed twice a turn. Obviously that healing doesn't have any effect on models that only have 1 health, which there are none of in this army. The other thing that the new Screaming Bell does is it has a spell which can basically turn the Screaming Bell into a gnaw hole, so you can teleport to and from it. You can also bring back destroyed units close to the Screaming Bell when you get that spell off, so that is quite useful in terms of adding some additional mobility to your army. Also, the Screaming Bell on every odd battle round, so that's battle rounds 1, 3, and 5, will increase the movement of everything within 13 inches by 2 inches, and then also provide some protection in the even battle rounds 2 and 4 by applying a -1 to hit modifier on everything within the radius. The other new War Scroll is for the Brood Terror, and this one is one that I just kit bashed from spare bits that I had. The new War Scroll is quite scary. It has a very powerful attack profile and a very useful ability in the combat phase. You can slightly reduce its damage output to increase the hit roll for a friendly Molder unit within 13 inches. So that, in this army, would apply mainly to the Rat Ogres and Storm Fiends. Sadly, the Help It Abomination does not actually benefit from any of the abilities that buff the Molder unit's attacks, like the Brood Terror. There's also a new heroic trait that gives +1 rend to a Molder unit, but that doesn't work on this one because, the Abomination just has companion weapons. So it's one of my favorite units. It's still quite powerful, especially against infantry. But yeah, it doesn't synergize as well with the Molder abilities. Then we got the Vermin Lord. This is the Vermin Lord Warp Seer in this army, which has kind of the weakest melee attack profile, but it is a 2-cast wizard. It's got some useful abilities like the Rampage, which can cause an enemy to strike last. There's also the Skaven spell, so you can actually cause 2 enemies to strike last, potentially, in the same turn. And then he can increase the movement with the 3 claw steps ahead in your opponent's hero phase. Also, once per battle, he can throw that little orb to deal some extra damage. For the Artifact of Power, I usually go for the Foul Hide, which is even more healing, so that's D3 healing on a hero, so I would give it to the Vermin Lord or the Screaming Bell. But I've also been looking at the War Scroll for Lord Screech Vermin King, who looks like a lot of fun. I haven't tried it out yet, but he has some very powerful abilities. He is also a 2-cast wizard. But the thing that's so nice about his ability is that it lasts until your next hero phase, which is quite significant, especially when you're using it to like buff your casting of your Master Clan wizards, like +1 to casting on the Vermin King and the Screaming Bell, and potentially Thankful too, into your opponent's turn. And the buff to Scryer units is even crazier because it's +1 to hit to all Scryer units within 13 inches until your next hero phase. So that is really significant, especially after, the nerf to all-out attack. So that buff will, again, last into your opponent's hero phase. So if you use it on covering fire, you can shoot with no penalty. It's quite deadly if you use it with the Scryer formation and if you're running more Scryer units. Now, a lot of people will say, well, shooting kind of sucks now with the new season with all the obscuring terrain and objectives and whatnot. In the few games that I've played so far, shooting still felt pretty strong, probably because I was just running a bunch of monster lists, and monsters and flyers do not benefit from obscuring. But also, I guess maybe some players just haven't figured out how to best make use of the obscuring terrain. But still, even if your whole army can be obscured, I find it hard to believe that someone could hide their entire 2,000 point army from your shooters, especially with Skaven, where you can teleport your shooters around through the knotholes or to the Screaming Bell. I would think that Skaven shouldn't have too much trouble finding targets for their shooters. Now, this particular list that I am showing you here doesn't have a whole lot of shooting. It's mainly just from the Storm Fiends, which I haven't really used much in 4th edition because their shooting got nerfed big time. The Warpfire gauntlets are still pretty good because they have shoot in combat, but the Rattling cannons are a lot weaker. Wind launchers have pretty short range, so don't use those. I mean, still a pretty good unit. Like, they went down in points a lot. But still, I think Rat Ogres are actually a lot more cost efficient. You can run 6 Rat Ogres for just a few more points than 3 Storm Fiends. So the main reason I'm just have the Storm Fiends in this list is simply because I just wanted to have a lot of really big rats. Still, if you do want to lean into the Scryer formation with Lord Screech Vermin King, all those stacking buffs could potentially make even Storm Fiends quite deadly at range. And again, the Storm Fiends do benefit from the Brood Terror's +1 to hit in combat, so yeah, they're just all around pretty deadly. Rat Ogres are a pretty great unit. They are quite flimsy, with a 5-up save and only 4 health each, but they can come back after being destroyed. Their War Scroll ability is pretty bad, +1 attack to the unit at the cost of taking D3 damage, which could potentially knock out one of your Rat Ogres, cancelling out the buff that you get from the attacks. They do have 5 attacks apiece, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s with 1 rend and 2 damage, which is not that great, but you can stack a whole bunch of buffs onto that. So, for example, you got the Heroic trait, which can give them +1 rend. You've got the Brood Terror giving them a +1 to hit. If you have a Priest, like if you are running a Plague Pack in there, you could cast the Prayer on them, giving them +1 to wound, and also potentially crit Mortal, which is very deadly on a reinforced unit of Rat Ogres. And they got some pretty solid shooting too, with the Warpfire guns hitting on 2s with Rend 2, shoot in combat. Those are quite nice as well. Thankful here is not the most amazing unit ever, but he just kind of tries to do everything. Like, he's a 2-cast wizard with +1 to cast. He heals at the end of the turn. He's okay in combat. He's got a Rampage, which can potentially do a lot of damage or nothing. And his War Scroll spell is just okay. So I feel like he's not really as necessary as some of the other monsters, but if you do want to run all the big rats, he is pretty fun. The Skaven Endless spells are actually pretty decent now. They were pretty terrible at the beginning of 4th edition compared to a lot of the other Universal lores, but now that most of the Universal lores cost points, and these are still free, the Bell of Doom is good for protecting your infantry. The Warp Lightning Vortex is really great now that the damage applies to anything moving through the invisible triangle created by the vortex. That's actually quite deadly if your opponent cannot get rid of it before their movement phase. The Vermintide is still pretty bad, but it can be used for zoning, screening, and whatnot. And in this list with 6 casts, you can just easily get all the endless spells out like every turn, and still have spells left over for Skitterleap and whatnot. Looking at this army, you might think, oh, that's a pretty slow-looking army, but Skaven are surprisingly fast. Again, the Bell increases the movement speed on the odd battle rounds. Then 3 claw steps ahead, it gives you a free move with, in this case, either the Rat Ogre, Storm Fiends, or the Screaming Bell in your opponent's hero phase, and they'd be getting potentially +4 to the movement if you have the Warp Seer and the Screaming Bell. So you can have Storm Fiends moving 10 inches in the enemy hero phase. And then you got teleporting through the knotholes to the Screaming Bell, and also Skitterleap up to 3 times a turn. So that's a whole lot of movement. And again, just massive amounts of healing. Like, most of the big things have a 5-up ward, and then you can either heal like 2 D3 or D3 and D6 at the end of every turn. Unless your opponent can focus them down in 1 turn, they're just going to heal back up. And an honorable mention to the Doom Wheel, which I do not have in this list, but this is one unit that I like to include in almost every Skaven list, just because it's so fast. It's 2d6 plus 7 inches, and then you can move it in the enemy hero phase as well with the 3 claw steps ahead. It won't do damage during the enemy turn, but it's pretty good for snagging objectives and whatnot. One other fun possibility I forgot to mention earlier is another one of the new heroic traits that they added with the Scourge of Ghyran. So there's the devious underling, which you might expect to go on one of the smaller heroes, but you could actually put it on like a Vermin Lord, because what you do is you choose another hero with equal or greater health. So in this case, you could just choose the Screaming Bell. And as long as that bell is alive, then all infantry within 13 inches of this Vermin Lord will get a 6-up ward. But then when the bell dies, if the Vermin Lord is still alive, then instead of the ward, all of your infantry get bonus to their charge rolls. So that's a fun trait as well if you don't have as many of the Molder units that can benefit from the Flesh Meddler trait. So those are some of the new tricks that Skaven have this season. Of course, it's still scratching the surface because there's just so many possibilities that Skaven have. There's just a ridiculous amount of options. And all of them are fun. I am looking forward to just playing a lot more games as Skaven this season. Let me know what your thoughts are about Skaven in the comments. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.